This is JC one more time. I got to thinking about that last chapter, and I just absolutely had to go ahead and add a little to it and help it out a little bit. As you can see, I still have my old shirt on. This is a different day, though. That was yesterday, and uh, so I thought about it last night. I just got up this morning, and well, actually, it's 11:09 a.m. right now, and I've been writing here for about an hour and a half to get chapter 24 done. So we'll go ahead without further ado. I'll go ahead and read chapter 24 for you, and we'll put her on YouTube and see if we can get going again. So hang on. This is chapter 24, my book I call Todd. Although the four of them were not too surprised to see Jim Carlton here at Denny's, they were slightly stunned to see him talking to, quote, the enemy, end quote, so to speak. Todd started to stand, but Junior stopped him. I know Jim pretty well, he said. I'll see what this is all about. And he slid out of the booth and walked to where Jim was sitting. He was careful to appear jovial and said, Hey, old man, fancy meeting you here. Looks like our lunchtime came at about the same time today. Jim looked surprised and stammered a bit. Hello, Junior. What are you doing in this part of the woods? He made no attempt to introduce the young man, and Junior never acknowledged the fellow. Yeah, Todd and his folks came to see me, and we got hungry. Started to go to the truck stop, but decided to check the mall out instead. He feigned looking around. It's quite a place, very modern and big. I haven't been to the new hardware store yet. That was coming after we put on the feed bag. Now Junior looked directly at the young man. Jim was aware the others were watching them. Just then Todd walked to the table. He extended his hand and said, Hi, Jim. It's good to see you. Then he looked at the other man and asked point blank, Who's your friend? Jim didn't answer. Instead, he motioned the two of them to have a seat. Todd asked, Might the girls join us? Jim indicated with a shake of his head he didn't mind, and Todd went back to the booth and brought the girls back. Jim had moved to the side of the table next to the young man, and Junior pulled an empty table over and the chairs with it, and the four of them sat down. Just then the waitress walked to the table. You folks all right? Ready to order? Betsy said, Yes, we are. We'll have 4 of your lunch specials with a bowl of sausage gravy and biscuits on the side, and orange juice all around. She looked at Jim. How about you two? Care to join us? Why, hell yes, why not? And he said to the waitress, 2 more of the same. Oh, and bring a fresh pot of coffee. We may need it. And then he grinned a wide, toothy grin. Well, the ice had been broken, and so far with no ill effects. During this entire time, the young man hadn't said a word. Jim said, Now, do we want to talk first or eat first? Todd spoke up. Let's eat first. I'm hungry. Leslie laughed aloud. Now, how did I know you were going to say that? Sounds like an echo. Todd chuckled. You know me too well, don't you, little girl? How's business in Belton, Jim asked Betsy. Pretty good, said Betsy. I got 3 pretty good helpers now, a senior citizen, a college girl, and if I can keep from being charged with a violation of the child labor law, a pretty sharp kid. They all had a laugh over that, all except the young man. The young man leaned forward and spoke up now. You may all think this is some kind of joke, but it ain't a damn bit funny. His face had reddened and he was obviously agitated. Everyone stopped and listened to the man now, but before he could go on, Jim said, Hold on, Jake. Just calm down and we'll get everything he said. You'll have your say, I promise. This seemed to placate the fellow some, and he leaned back and relaxed a bit. Very well mannered, ain't he? Asked Jim. It's a family thing, in the genes. Takes after his grandma. The waitress came now, carrying a tray and a stand for it. She set the tray of food on the table and spread and locked in place a pole stand and set the tray on it. I'll have to make 2 trips, so who goes first? Betsy, Leslie, and Junior said in unison, Todd, and pointed him out. That got a laugh out of them. It even coaxed a smile from Jake, the young man. The waitress went back and in a minute brought the rest of the orders, along with the side orders of sausage gravy and biscuits and the coffee pot. Soon both tables were covered with delicious looking and smelling food. Now they all started their meals. Talking mostly subsided, and only an occasional comment about the food was made. This had turned into a somewhat pleasant gathering, one that almost made some of them forget why they were here. Leslie thought to herself, "This kid's going to be a toughie." Todd nudged her and whispered, "Not really, not really." Les bumped his arm and said, "Don't do that." The rest looked at Todd and Leslie, and Les said, "It's nothing really. You had to be there." No one at the table would challenge this answer. Now most of the eating was over with, and a chorus of satisfied faces graced the table. Jim pushed his plate back and said, "I guess you all want to know what's going on, don't you?" Junior said, "Jim, we've been friends a long time. I think we always will be." Betsy and Leslie were now listening intently as Todd spoke. "Is it Jake Carleton?" he asked the young man. "Yeah, it is," the fellow said, a bit defensively. Jake started to say something, but Todd stopped him with a motion of his hand. "Hold it, Jim. I need to get something said, and if anybody wants to disagree with me, I'll listen." It was very quiet now. It was so seldom Todd took the offensive about things, at least vocally. The rest were now willing to just listen to what he had to say. "It's pretty obvious this man is your grandson, and it's obvious there's something important enough that he feels compelled to act on it. Calling us up and saying some threatening things is proof of that." The young man looked as if he wanted to speak, but Todd continued. "I think your grandson is concerned about you, and it has to be something that means a whole lot to him. Maybe to others of your family. It means enough to get him to act the way he has. I think we at this table are all not just friends, but very good friends. And I believe we would trust each other about anything, if it ever came to that. Whatever problem there is that makes Jake do what he has done, that made Jake do what he has done, discourage us from becoming partners is serious, and frankly, I doubt it has anything to do with the business itself. I have to think this is a personal thing. In a nutshell, whatever his problem is must be very personal and serious. I trust you, Jim, and if you decided to not explain to us about what the problem is, what made your grandson act up the way he did, if it's something you would rather not be known by anyone else, I'd drop this inquiry right now and trust whatever you conclude is right for you." You could hear a pin drop at this table, and most of the rest of the cafe as well. Then there started a smattering of applause at the second table over, and the applause grew until it filled the cafe. Todd felt blood rush to his face in a monster blush, and he ducked his head. A woman's voice was heard to say, "My God, that's the kind of friends I want." And ensuing, "Me too's" and "You bets" filled the cafe. Now Junior stood slightly and waved his arms for quiet as he cleared his throat. "Okay, folks, thanks very much to all of you. Now it's coffee time." The applause gradually subsided until it was once again fairly quiet in the cafe. Jim spoke up then. "If we're finished eating, let's go to my house and finish this discussion." He looked around for approval of his idea. Everyone agreed, and the group paid their checks and went to Jim's house. The first thing the girls noticed was the clutter. The house seemed clean, but was somewhat cluttered, with a shirt on the arm of the sofa and a light jacket hung over the back of a chair. Betsy immediately picked up the clothes and asked Jim where they went. Jim pointed to a hall closet, and Betsy opened the door and hung the items on hangers and on the clothes rod. Then she came back and asked Jim, "Where do you keep the coffee?" Jim led her to the kitchen and pointed to a shelf to the right of the sink. Betsy, seeing several dishes still in the sink, asked, "Where are the dish towels?" Without comment, Jim pulled open a drawer and handed her a clean towel. Betsy said, "Thanks, I'll be out in a minute," and Jim went back into the living room. Everyone took seats around the room, readying themselves for the coming conversation. Jim said, "Let's wait for Betsy to get here." He added, "Junior, how's business in your part of the state?" Junior replied, "Not too bad. It's getting a little better since I put an ad on the radio." A few new people are coming in, and some of the old ones who used to go to Belton. Bobby's idea was a good one about the radio ad. He glanced in acknowledgement at Todd, but didn't mention him. Well, mine ain't no better, but with any luck it might pick up soon. Jim didn't mention the franchise, but everyone knew he was referring to it. Just then Betsy came in and found a place to sit. Now they were all here, and a moment of silence ensued. Todd could feel the hesitancy to start talking by Jim. He also could feel a need by Leslie to speak up. He looked at her with a grin and said, "What do you think, kid?" Les said, "Jim, no one here knows anything except you and your grandson. I'd like the rest of us to just listen, and you and Jake tell us whatever this is about, whatever you want to." She looked around at the others, and they nodded their agreements. "Okay," said Jim, "I'll tell you all about it. Me and Jake will." He looked at his grandson, and Jake nodded his agreement. "I've been kind of quiet about all this, not telling my family much until we got this franchise thing going. You know, I want to make this work and make it turn a profit before I cash in my chips. Frankly, I didn't want anyone here to know about it until the store did turn a profit. Knowing Todd is his father's son, I was pretty sure it wouldn't take more than a year or so to get things going and putting a couple of bucks in my pocket. Jake and his mom and dad and his sister are my only living relatives, and I don't have a lot of money saved to bury me with, and I can't get life insurance." He looked at Jake now and around at the rest of them. He could see curiosity on the faces of the others now, all except Todd. He thought Todd knew what was coming already. He didn't understand how Todd could know, but he knew he did. He wrestled with how to say what now had to be said. It was a hard thing to do. Jake stood up abruptly. "He won't tell you. Grandpa has cancer, and he hasn't got very long to live. And we don't want him to live what life he has left to live, working in a no-damn store that ain't even paying for itself." So there it was. Jim was quiet, and he leaned back against the back of the sofa. No one spoke. It had all finally been said. And now, what do we do? Where do we go from here? Well, this is the end of chapter 24, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, why, you come on back for chapter 25. And until you get back, this is JC saying I'll see you down the road, if the good Lord's willing, and the creek don't rise.